John McWhinney. As the semester winds down, he's got a little more free time than he did in the middle. This is Sunday night at 10 p.m. It's now week 14 of our Olympic Sports Podcast, in which we talk about all of UB's other sports that compete just as hard and win the same MAC championships and do all the same stuff that football and basketball does. The whole crew will be together. Well, maybe not the whole crew. A more representative crew will be together tomorrow night for football to talk after the Northern Illinois game and the upcoming Akron match. I call everything matches now that I'm covering soccer all fall. Akron game. That'll come tomorrow. Basketball season's underway. Basketball shows are probably going to wait until football season's over. It's just how much time we have. But right now we're talking everything else, which as the fall winds down is not very much. This is probably our last semi-full weekend for a stretch there where you're used to 6 or 7 teams at a time. This weekend, all we've got going is cross country. Volleyball's still in the regular season. Soccer was in the MAC tournament, had a very strong weekend, men's soccer. And wrestling is in the early stages of their season. From here until early to mid-January, it's only going to be wrestling and swimming. And when I say that, it's swimming. Swimming's going next weekend, as is wrestling. And then after that, it's only wrestling through all of December. So we're going to slow way down. We're probably going to cut down to 30-minute shows. We might cut down to shows every other week. We might not, because wrestling does stay up pretty good. But we're really hitting a lull here. When things do pick up again, we're going to have in short order tennis and track and field very quickly. Swimming and diving will pick up. And then as February and March hit, we'll have softball and baseball pretty fast. And March and April are very, very busy times. Fortunately, that's still 4 or 5 months off. As I soccer and wrestling this week, probably the most news is in wrestling, so we're going to save that for last. The highest stakes were in men's soccer, so we're going to go with that first. Just to start, men's soccer, as we told you about jubilantly 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, they clinched their entrance in the MAC tournament. First appearance since 2011. Last week, they followed that up with a narrow loss at Western Michigan. It was pretty much already known that UB would be facing Western Michigan in the semifinals, so neither team really showed their hand too much. UB lost 1-0, only goal coming off a set piece. Keep that in mind. And headed into the MAC tournament this weekend as the 3 seed, again with a rematch of Western Michigan in the semifinal. And John, I don't know how much you were able to watch the game. I was able to watch the game in full against Western Michigan. Broncos really made their name this season with a stingy defense. They got the best goalie in the MAC in Drew Shepard. Their backup, Chase Rao, is probably number 3 goalie in the MAC, I would say, honestly. They were giving up about a half goal per game on the season. UB now, for a couple seasons, has made their bread and butter on late desperation comebacks. And for a team to only get 3 shots on goal and win, I won't spoil it if you haven't seen the front of the site. UB beat Western Michigan on Friday. I don't know if you're able to watch, but for a team to only get 3 shots on goal and win, that's pretty good, even for UB's kind of cardiac kids style.
Yeah, the cardiac bulls. You mentioned Western's goalies being the number 1 and number 3. Well, Joe Kuda this weekend really gave them a run for their money. He played lights out, especially today in the MAC championship game against Akron. He had some real highlight reel type saves. I actually only caught like the very end of the Western game.
That was the part that was worth watching.
yeah. I saw the 2 UB goals. So I didn't see minutes 0 through I think 80. Then I saw 80 through 96 when Cicerone scored.
Yeah.
I think that goal, that the game winner in overtime, I think that goal is better than his midfield goal from last year that won Top Drawer
I think it is too. I think it is too. Yeah. I'm going to throw some numbers at you, and then I'm going to show the 2 goals. And I think Daniel Cramarosa's goal that tied it up at 86 minutes was more impressive than Russell's. I'm just going to put that out there. Keep that in mind as we watch it. I think that Russell's free kick, he just threw it up into the wind and hoped that something good happened. And something good did happen because in part of the win, in part Western Michigan's goalie was not fresh. He wasn't tested very much all game. As I said, only 3 shots on goal. MAC semifinal against Western Michigan. UB goes down on a set piece in the 66th minute. Western Michigan scored twice in 2 games against UB, both on free kicks. So UB's defense really held strong over the last 3 weekends of the year. If you count the Bowling Green game the weekend prior, they only gave up 4 goals in 4 games, which is real solid, especially when you've got someone like Russell Cicerone. He's good for something every game or two. Just some stats: Western Michigan outshot UB 27-7 in this match, and they put 12 on net. Joe Kuda finished with 11 saves. That's a career high by 3. His previous career high was 8 in the regular season match against Akron this season. And some of them were absolute tremendous saves. He kept this team in this game while UB held on and slowly built up their momentum. This isn't true this year, but last year's MAC of 2014, no goalie had more than 9 saves on the season, and Kuda went and had 11 in a conference game. That said, we've already kind of mentioned UB won 2-1. Western Michigan opened the scoring on a free kick in the second half. And then Western Michigan, I said Daniel Cramarosa equalized it in sorry. I hate when I do that inception thing on the screen shares, but that's what happens. Daniel Cramarosa equalizes in 86 minutes, as you can see here. This is going to be just kind of a cross that pops out. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Cassidy Kidd scoring a goal where the ball comes into space and no one really marked her as she dropped off. And that's just going to happen with Cramarosa here. And then Russell Cicerone's goal is going to be off a free kick in the first overtime, which we'll talk more about once we show it. So this is just going to bounce away. And that's nothing but just tremendous. He gets it with the outside of his foot, which is technically difficult. And it just finds the back of the net. All he did was hammer it, but he was in the right place at the right time. And then after this, here's Cicerone. He's going to kick it in from here. And a couple things. One, watch this guy. Watch him. I don't know what he's doing, but he's my favorite. I want to show this goal again. Watch Western Michigan's goalie on here, because as I said, he wasn't tested very much, and UB had the wind at their back. And I think that he wasn't ready for this. He comes off his line pretty quickly, and then I think the ball comes to him quicker than he expects, and he ends up diving back into the post to try and stop it. I think he thought he was going to be able to come out and catch it, and it floated over his head and arrived at the net faster than he expected. But that's a heck of a goal, not only from 35 yards out, but from a steep angle. I need to figure out how to stop sharing now. I don't know if I still am. Stop. That's we got there. That's Cicerone's 3rd free kick goal of the season. Northern Illinois, I think. And he scored one there against Western Michigan. That put UB through to the MAC final, the first MAC final in 8 years, back to 2007, when, surprise, surprise, they also faced Akron. That's kind of tradition.
That was Bobby Shuttleworth, right?
Yes.
Back then.
Yeah, I think Shuttleworth was still around I think Shuttleworth was 2006 to 2008. I didn't know you were going to bring that up, so I didn't look it up.
Surprise.
But go ahead.
It was funny that Cicerone was named MAC Player of the Year, and everyone was saying, "Well, who is this guy?" Or I should say, all the Akron fans were saying, "Well, who is this guy? I've never heard of him." That goal in overtime, that's who he is.
That's who he is.
He does.
Yeah, and if you asked me for what can Cicerone do in the semifinal against Western Michigan to prove that he's the MAC Player of the Year, rings, with a certain design they could stamp in the wax of the envelopes and stuff. Cicerone has a free kick goal from 30 yards out. That's how he proves who he is.
And it was Stu Riddle's first win against his former team.
His first win against his former team, and it had been kind of lopsided previously. He lost his first game against them 4-0. That's when he had all freshmen. And then they had a really miraculous 2-2 tie last year where Cicerone earned a penalty kick in the last 15 seconds last year to salvage a 2-2 tie. And then they lost 1-0 in the regular season, but that game isn't so meaningful. I've been harping all fall about how men's soccer, Stu Riddle's schedule gave them a full week in between conference games to prepare specifically for each team. And effectively, they had 2 weeks to prepare for this single match against Western Michigan. I think that really bore out. Western Michigan is a little bit punchless on offense. They had a lot more success on offense than I expected. So thank goodness for Joe Kuda. We mentioned his career high 11 saves earlier. A couple seconds when we move on to Akron, the final today. UB's defense held very strong. And without, especially in both games this weekend, without committing so many resources to stopping the ball at all costs as they did in the regular season. Against Akron in the regular season, UB frequently had 9 guys behind the ball, 10 guys behind the ball, and said, we don't care if we only get one offensive chance every 5 or 6 minutes. We're going to stop goals. And I wasn't able to watch the Akron game today, but I was able to read up on it on Twitter, and it seems like in both games they got more offensive chances, which is real good. In both games, they were kind of jilted of a penalty that Cicerone would probably convert. Against Western Michigan, there was a handball in the box with about 15 minutes to play that everyone agrees it was a handball in the box. I can't remember if the stream was working or not at the time, but that should have been a penalty kick that would have equalized the game before we got to 86 minutes and kind of the season on the line. And then today against Akron, where it's hard to look at the Akron game and say, boy, this one call cost UB anything. But there was a play against Steven Stryker had a scoring chance in the second half, and he was hauled down, literally pulled down by his shoulder on a clear chance, just him and the goalie, and that's a textbook red card. And it wasn't given so poorly that assistant coach Cody Camp got a red card for arguing. I have less to say about this Akron game. Obviously, UB didn't win. No surprise or shame in that. Akron's the number 3 team in the country. They're a perennial national title contender right now. What I'm very pleased with is they only lost 1-0, to be honest. I think if not for Joe Kuda, they could have lost 3 or 4-0. We mentioned that some Akron fans are salty about the fact that Cicerone won Player of the Year. The 2 leading contenders after him, I think, were Akron's Richie Laria and Adam Najem. Najem is a potential future I think he's a future international player, whether I honestly don't know if he's American or if he's from if he holds another country's passport. But Adam Najem is probably one of the most well-rounded players in college soccer. And he had, I think, 9 goals and 9 assists. And Richie Laria had 8 goals and 5 assists. And both had a good case for MAC Player of the Year, except that if Russell had either one of them to work off, he would have had even more than 12 goals and 8 assists. 12 goals leads the MAC, 8 assists second, tied for second. Both of those guys, the reason I bring this up and talk about MAC Player of the Year is both those guys had breakaways and clear one-on-one scoring chances on Joe Kuda in the second half today, and neither was able to score. Kuda followed up his 11-save performance against Western Michigan with 10 saves today against Akron, and really the Zips didn't score until I think they scored at the very end of the first half. And really, Kuda kept UB in the game in the second half. The Bulls did pretty good in the second half for knowing they needed to get a goal while still minimizing the threats against them. They played Akron even in corner kicks, which you only get corner kicks when you're possessing the ball in the attacking third. Stryker should have earned a red card. And Russell Cicerone had a free kick just outside the box in the final seconds, last 10 seconds if that. But as it goes down 1-0 in the MAC final, John, I have a point to speak to about kind of the progression of the program as Stu Riddle enters his 4th year and his core grows up. I don't know if you want anything more to say on this season specifically or this game specifically as a whole.
I don't really have too much to say. I think even though the loss it's a little disappointing, but I mean, it's like you said, it's not exactly unexpected. Uh, Akron is Akron. They're one of the perennial powers in men's soccer, not just in the MAC, but on a national level. I was happy that a team in the fall did make it to a championship game, and they outplayed my expectations, what I expected from the team. So I tip my hat to them. They had a very good season.
Yeah, on Akron specifically and their powerhouse status, I think I told you, John, in private today that, or maybe it's last night, a win over Akron in this game would be, bar none, the biggest upset in school history across all sports. The only thing that I think even comes close is a football game in the, I don't even know which decade, a football game against Harvard when they won. I think it was in 1958 in that year. I think it kicked off the legendary 1958 season, but I could be wrong. It much bigger within its sport than football over Ball State in 2008. Just absolutely one of the biggest wins in school history for any sport, and a 1-0 loss. Akron's a top 5 team in the country. They're probably going to get the number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and UB played them to 1-goal losses twice this season. Western Michigan spent time ranked this season, and UB played them to a 1-goal loss and a 1-goal win. Bowling Green spent time ranked this season. UB beat them by a goal. This year it felt a little fluky, but they won them. They fought through and they won them. And when I talk about kind of this program advancing, I've been saying all year that the goal for this men's soccer team needed to be the MAC tournament. They had to get in and had to get a taste of the postseason, because next year Russell Cicerone is a senior. And he's one of the 2 or 3 greatest players in program history, really. And he needed to get some experience. His classmates, his large junior class, needed to get some experience in the postseason before it was do or die time as seniors. Alec Fisher has been an important part of the defense forever. Daniel Cramarosa has shown some real offensive strength. This year we need him around. Braden Pulver stepped up in a big way. Austin Place has always been a factor in the defense. Steven Stryker is going to be a senior next year. And Braden Scales took a big step forward offensively. That's a core of the team. Every single one of those guys appeared in almost every single one of the games this year. They needed to get that experience this year. But I was hoping for them to slip in. I was hoping for them to slip into the 4 seed and get a postseason game. I wasn't even entertaining the idea that maybe they can lock up a postseason match with a week to go. I wasn't even entertaining the idea that, I think I said at times, if you can pull an upset, you only need one upset to get in the MAC final, but I wasn't really serious about it. And that's what they got. And really, this team is a year ahead of schedule from where I expected them to be this year. They beat Canisius handily. They struggled on the road a bit, which was a bit disappointing. That trip to Texas and that trip to New England was a really tough 2 weeks. But they made UB Stadium a tough place to play at home. They pulled a road point out of Northern Illinois in conference. I already mentioned they beat Canisius. They won. They had a couple late goals against Stony Brook. They had 1 late goal against Stony Brook to even. They scored a bunch of goals at times. They gutted out a tie against Niagara after losing all the momentum. They beat Bonaventure by 6, which isn't hard to do, but they did it. Preseason, I said I don't really care what happens as long as this team makes the MAC tournament. But this team, I think that's the easiest way for me to put it. They're a full year ahead of what I hoped for. I hoped that next year, championship. They'll get through. They'll get into the postseason with a week to spare. They'll win their semifinal, and they'll hope to put things together in a fluke win against Akron. That's what I was hoping for out of this heavy junior class right now as seniors for the pinnacle of their careers, and now they've hit it this year, and they're poised to really put something together. And they really finished the season strong, considering some extenuating circumstances too that I forgot to mention. Nick Forrester did not play today because of yellow card accumulation, and on top of that Fox got a yellow card in the 5th minute. And so once you're sitting on a yellow card, if you pick up another that's red, and your team plays one down for the rest of the match, so to be without your top center back, and Forrester, who was second team All-MAC. And then for Fox Slotmaker to be playing a little cautious for the rest of the match, for them still to hold Akron to a single goal is really impressive. I think even after Cicerone leaves, there's still going to be a real big core of defensive talent on this team that sets them up for the beginnings of a year in, year out contender versus a team that works in cycles like we might be looking at right now. I think there's a potential for it to become something bigger. I should mention that all-tournament team, Joe Kuda was, of course, named goaltender for the all-tournament team, and Daniel Cramarosa and Russell Cicerone were named there. I mentioned Forrester. Marcus Hansen was also named second team All-MAC, and Russell Cicerone was first team, obviously. 3 players on the All-MAC teams is the most since 2008. As I said before, it was UB's first MAC final year high for men's soccer where they're at right now, and it's really looking like the team's going to be better next year. Any last words on men's soccer, John?
No, I'm excited to see what next season brings. Season ends today. I'm already thinking about next year.
Once women's soccer got their hold on me last year, I spent 8 months waiting for the next. I can't believe that season's over already. I write about other things, but that's really, I'm just waiting for women's soccer to start up again. Another team that finished their season, pair of teams really, was cross country. A couple weeks ago, 2 weekends ago, we talked about cross country in the MAC tournament. There they are. Not the MAC tournament, MAC championships. Kind of bummed by those results. I thought both teams were led by freshmen during their season, and both of those freshmen kind of had off days. I thought the women performed well. Historically, I thought they could have done better. I thought the men failed to take the step forward from 2014 that I was hoping for from them. The season doesn't end with the MAC championships, and you can't actually qualify for nationals from the conference championships anyway. You actually go and compete in your regional championships, which we've spoken all year of the teams being in the regional rankings. This is where that bears fruit. Went to compete in Boston this year. They usually in the past have been in the Bronx, but they were in Boston this year. And the women finished 15th at NCAA Northeast Regionals, which I think coming into the MAC championships, they were ranked 14th in the Northeast, so 15th holds up pretty well. Nothing spectacular. A little bit slower than last season, but they scored many fewer points. By place, they were much faster. I've been real high on Amy Shaw since her strong track season last year, and she's been, I think, her and Sade Henry have gone back and forth on the leaders of the women's pack this year. She finished 34th. A top 35 finish at regionals is real solid, and she's only a sophomore right now. I think we've still got 2 full years of Amy Shaw. I'll have to double check that as I talk. But strong individual performance there from Amy Shaw. Women kind of held up their end of the bargain. Amy Shaw's a junior, so we still have her for 1 year. On the men's side, the men, like I said, were kind of nicked up by injuries for the MAC championships, didn't perform as well as I thought. They had a rough day. They finished 18th, which after being ranked generally between 9th and 12th in the regional rankings all season, they finished 18th. They were led by Barrett Kemp, who finished 30th. Extremely good. That's a great result. Top 25 are named all region, so he's just on the cusp of that with at least 1 more year remaining. And really, the rest of the runners came together in a really good pack. 2 through 6 all finished within 17 seconds of each other, and that's good. To get that back part of your pack running together is how you win and score points and score lower. The big thing for the men was that Cameron Bruce, who's been UB's top runner for the last couple of years, was running in the top 70 through the first half of the race and fell off and ended up not finishing. And if he had finished the race where he had been in the pack, UB might have finished instead of 18th, they might have finished 13th or 14th. They were kind of at the bottom of a tightly clumped tier. So that's a bit of a bummer, but we know that Andrew Burge was dealing with an injury at the end of the season that held him out of both the MAC championships and the regional championships. We know that Jack Jibb was dealing with a sprained ankle that slowed him in both of these races, and Cam Bruce was a DNF in the regional championships. And so all that's understandable. It's a little bit of a bummer just because I thought they were having such a strong season, but now they've got some time off before track. John, I don't know if you have anything to say about cross country. I kind of covered it mostly 2 weeks ago, but
Yeah, I think you hit pretty much everything. I don't really have anything else to add. Although I'm looking right now at the official regional results, and they have Amy Shaw listed as a sophomore. So
that would be great.
So whichever one, not sure which is true, but that's
I'm
there.
not super inclined to trust UB. I am in a lot of places, but on what year people are, I'm not. They seem to. Let me double check and see what she was on track last year. But yeah, so cross country is done. They may not be a very exciting thing to talk about on the podcasts, but she was listed as a sophomore last year. I'm not sure. She might be a sophomore for cross country purposes. I know that Zach Ahart ran 4 years of cross country and then sat a year of cross country and still had a year of track left last year. So they might be skewed that way. Those year-round competitions really mess with what we know about eligibility because it is technically two different sports. So someone can exhaust their 4 years in one and still have another year remaining in the other. Sport that's not done with their season but are done with their regular season is volleyball, and we have really not this year, John, hyped up Blair Brown Lipsitz as much in volleyball as we should have given the results she's gotten in MAC play. I'm gonna let you start for volleyball right now while I look some things up.
Yeah, I mean, this was that was more than a few weeks ago. I think it was towards the end of September, when their out of conference schedule ended. We were talking about a team that we would think maybe would only get one, maybe 2 wins on the entire season. And here we are now at the end of the regular season, and Blair Brown, she did something that no other volleyball coach has. UB earned the 7th seed through some convoluted tiebreaker that I know you have.
I'll tell you, but I promise you it's actually not that convoluted. But I'll let you finish your spiel, and then I'll lay it all out.
So they clinched that. Really, it was a 3-match winning streak that they had, which was on the road. They won at Eastern, at Central, and at Akron. And then they beat Bowling Green at home 2 matches later. And then with whatever people that lost, and things shook out the way they did, and they were the 7th seed heading into the MAC tournament, which I would think is a pretty big accomplishment for the first-year head coach, who we all had questions about at the beginning of the season, and then throughout a conference we were thinking, well, maybe this team, it's just a building year, and we weren't sure how many more wins they were going to get, and here we are.
And to be fair, it is a building year. I think last year's team wipes the floor with this year's team. I really do. But last year's team dropped a lot of games, a lot of matches they should have won. And this year's team went out and they beat the teams lower than them. Of their 7th, there's 4 teams below them in the standings. Of their 6 matches against those teams, they went 5-1. And if you wanna get in front of 4 teams and make in the MAC tournament, you just got to beat 4 teams, and that's what they did. And the reason that they were able to eke out in front of Central and Eastern, who actually at the end of the weekend, Buffalo, Central Michigan, and Eastern all tied at 6-10, which I was not expecting. Eastern Michigan and Central Michigan had weekends. They Central lost at Toledo, which is ridiculous, and Eastern beat Toledo, and then Eastern beat somebody on Friday that I wasn't expecting them to beat. Anyway, UB beat the two of them, and that really was the pivotal weekend. And so that's pretty much how the tiebreaker worked. There were three teams tied at 6 and 10, at 7, 8, and 9. And what the MAC does for shared three or more way tiebreakers is they take everyone's record against everyone else. So UB was 2 and 0. Central and Eastern both had one loss to UB, and I think Eastern beat Central twice. Both of their divisional matchups went to Eastern. So UB was 2 and 0, Eastern was 2 and 1, and Central was 0 and 3, and so that's how they broke out the tiebreakers. You highlighted that weekend on the road against Eastern and Central. Not only was it on the road, not only did they win the next game, also on the road against Akron, but they beat both Eastern and Central 3-2 in 5 sets. And if I'm not mistaken, when you hold together all their points from the 5 sets, I think they were actually outscored on both occasions. Nope, they just barely a little better than Eastern, but Central definitely outscored them on the whole match. But in both of these matches back in late October, Friday the 23rd and Saturday the 24th, they went 5 sets and they ended up winning the 5th set 15-13, which is as close as you can come without playing extra points. And at the end of the day, that's what happened. Central beat some teams higher than UB in the rankings. I know Central beat Ball State. And Central might have gotten the win over Miami too. I'm not 100% sure right now. But they couldn't take care of teams below them. They lost to Eastern Michigan. They lost to Toledo. Eastern Michigan lost to some teams around them too. Whereas UB, like I said, they went 5 and 1. They had in 3 games against Central, Eastern, and Toledo, they went 3 and 0. They swept Bowling Green 2 and 0, and they split their 2 matches with Akron. And they went 5 and 1 against those teams. And then they got their 6th win against whom? Oh, you know what? 2 and 0 against Bowling Green, 1 and 1 against Akron, Eastern, Central, and Toledo. How did they get to 6 wins, John? What am I missing? Toledo. I should have really looked this up earlier. Bowling Green twice. I feel like such an idiot right now. I have no idea how to count. I don't know.
They beat it was Toledo. They swept Bowling Green, beat Eastern, beat Central, beat Akron. So that's Toledo.
It's 3 from the West and 3 wins against the East. That's 6.
Yeah, it was
okay.
Beat Toledo, beat BG twice, Eastern, Central, and then Akron. That's your 6.
They played 7 games against that group, not 6. That's where I was getting messed up. So they went 6 and 1 against the teams below them instead of 5 and 1, which is even better. But UB, usually when you talk about a team beating the teams they should, and to get to their place, it's usually someone who's a middling team in the conference. UB's not a good team in this conference, but they beat the teams they should. They didn't pull any upsets, but they took care of business against teams below them, and it worked out for them. As John's mentioned, they finished 7th in the conference. That is their highest ever. They've never finished higher than 8th. Last year was the first time they ever finished 8th. They've now won 6 games in conference 3 years in a row. That's the most they've ever won in the MAC. Obviously, last year I thought they were good enough to win 8 or 9 in conference, but some injuries, some disagreements with the coach, some games where they just came out playing poorly, held them back. Like I said, I think last year's team was better. But this year's team right now is starting 3 freshmen, is at times seeing 4 freshmen on the floor at the same time. As John said, we hit the beginning of October, and we thought this team was going to win 4 games all season, if that. And they're 6 and 10 in conference, and they've got a berth in the MAC tournament. That's going to be huge. They do face Ball State, who, even more so than Central Michigan, Ball State's a team that's beaten some teams above them and really had some stinkers of losses. The teams did face on Halloween, and Ball State swept UB at home. This match will be in Athens. Ohio gets to host the tournament Ohio's not the reigning champ, but they get to host the tournament. I'm not sure what's up there. But that'll be Thursday. Last year, UB in the first round of the MAC tournament lost to Western Michigan, and Western Michigan went on to upset Miami and Ohio to win the conference and advance to the national tournament. So maybe the winner comes out of UB's game again. Maybe not. This is a scenario where I'm just pretty darn happy to even be here, to have one more game. I would love for some consistency, but over the course of the season, we've slowly seen UB's offense look a little better. In these final 3 games of the season, they've been swept 3 times by the front 3 teams in the MAC East, in Ohio, Penn State, and Miami. They're efficient. They allow the teams to get into runs because they score so quickly rallies. I'd like to see UB put up a bit more of a fight against Ball State. If they don't, much like men's soccer last year, just a tremendous amount of improvement over last season, or from the beginning of the season, even from an early loss to Stony Brook, from times against better teams in Ole Miss and Mississippi State, or Southern Mississippi, that they took them to 5 sets, or took out 2-0 leads and couldn't close it out. They were able to win some 5-set matches that really gave them a spot in the MAC tournament. They'll lose next year. We might talk about them next week too once the tournament's over, but they'll lose next year 3 seniors in Marissa Prinsbach, Megan Lipsky, and Akila Lane, and they kind of have okay backfill compared to who they've had to fill in for this season coming in. Prinsbach's missed a lot of time. Freshman Madison Clark is coming at setter. Akila Lane will be gone, but they will return Amber Hatchett off a medical redshirt, so there'll still be a senior middle blocker there. And then Lipsky will be gone. There's going to be some room to fill in for some outside hitters there, but Felicia Watkins has gotten a lot of time as a freshman right now. So volleyball's not done yet. If we were to look at just this weekend, we'd be pretty bummed with 3 consecutive sweeps dating back to last weekend. But we knew coming into this weekend that UB had clinched a spot, and we got exactly what we needed from other places for UB to move up from the 8th spot, sit 7th for their highest finish ever. We'll talk more about that next week once the tournament's wrapped up. And that leaves us with one of the podcast's favorite sports, one that competed just today, so we've got a lot to talk about. Wrestling. Last time we talked about wrestling was 2 weeks ago. We were absolutely giddy over an upset against Maryland. They continued with a couple of duels today at the Northeast duels. They compete against 3 schools: Division III Springfield, nationally ranked number 20 West Virginia, and a real even match against a team that's probably a little more highly regarded than Buffalo right now, but won't be for much longer in Lock Haven. Another real strong weekend for the men. Also 4 wrestlers competed at the East Stroudsburg Open. Open competitions are a place for wrestlers who are redshirting to compete without burning their red shirt. We mostly look at that to see who's developing individually. John, the wrestlers went 2-1 today, made some history in the morning, had a pair of really impressive showings in the afternoon. So say what you want to say, and I'll fill in. I've got to let you have some time just to talk for 15 minutes.
You mentioned the history that was made. This is their win against Springfield College, which Springfield is a Division III school. Actually, historically one of the better programs in Division III. They shut them out 51-0. It was a dominant showing from top to bottom. Only 2 UB wrestlers won by decision. Brandon Lappy won 10-3, and Muhammad McBride won 8-5. Other than that, everyone won by pinfall or technical fall.
Technical fall. The match is automatically called off when someone gets a 15-point lead, just because the dominance is too great for anyone to. Nobody can stomach it after that.
It's wrestling's version of the mercy rule.
Hide your women and children because it's just too. It's just too scary.
So Springfield, there's not really much to take or say from that other than that UB came out and did what they were supposed to do. And with the shutout, and as we know, last week they shut out Davidson. That's
2 weeks
who they
ago, in
shut out.
fact.
So having two shutouts, especially this early, they haven't had a two shutout season since the 05-06 season, which I believe that year Jim Buechner was named MAC Coach of the Year. They finished third in the MAC championships. Really, really good year. First time since then they've had two shutouts in a season, so that's nice to see. Then we move on to number 20, West Virginia, which West Virginia is in the Big 12. I'd say is probably on par with the MAC. As far as wrestling conferences go, it's the Big 10, the MAC, and the Big 12 are the wrestling conferences. Which are West Virginia. The marquee matchup was number 3 Zeke Moisey taking on Kyle Akins. Moisey, for those who don't know, was the NCAA runner-up at 125 pounds last year. He upset and a bunch of people on the way there. He was a complete out of nowhere. One of those guys. He made it to the final and lost there. And Akins held his own. He lost 5-3, but I think to the national runner-up and the number 3 ranked wrestler in the nation, that's not too bad. And Brian Lantry, he's a guy I've been really impressed with. He went 3-0 today, had a 10-4 win over Corey Stainbrook at 133 pounds. Then Brandon Lappy came out, had a really thrilling win in double overtime to give UB the lead. And then Colt Cotton, who I think we're going to start calling him Major now, Major Cotton, he won by pinfall and then had 2 major decisions. The one against West Virginia gave UB a 10-3 lead. Unfortunately, after that, UB wouldn't score again until the final match when Jake Gunning came out and had a bit of a mild upset of the number 27 ranked wrestler in the nation.
Jake Gunning. I'll let John continue, but we're going to talk about Jake Gunning. That's what's up. We're going to talk about him in a second because I'm stoked about Jake Gunning, and so is John. But John knows things about wrestling, and I don't. So for me to be stoked is significant. Continue with West Virginia, please.
The only match that was kind of out of hand was at 157 pounds. Dylan Cottrell had a major decision on Tim Schaefer. Other than that, Tyler Rill, Muhammad McBride, Joe Ariel, and James Benjamin all had really close matches, especially Ariel and Benjamin. Ariel lost in overtime to the number 31 ranked wrestler, and James Benjamin lost 9-8 to the number 8 ranked wrestler in the nation, Jake Smith, who was the Big 12 runner-up last year. Really happy with the way they wrestled against West Virginia. It could have been a win. It was close enough. I mean, if Benjamin gets that win there at 197 and Areola sneaks in that takedown in overtime, it's a UB win. So they're right there on the cusp of taking down these nationally ranked teams, which is nice. Then you move on to Lock Haven, which in my preview I talked about Lock Haven and UB matching up fairly well and being fairly similar teams. Historically, Lock Haven, they're a very well respected program. They've been ranked before. They've had their fair share of All-Americans, including Dan Neff. He's currently number 12 in the nation. He's returning All-American. He was 7th or 8th at the NCAA championships last year at 149 pounds, and he dropped down to 141 pounds for this season. And it was back and forth the whole way. it started out with Kyle Aikens lost, Brian Lantry won, Brandon Lappy lost, Cole Cotton won, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Which I think the real deciding factor was Colt Cotton getting that major decision.
Yep. That's what did it.
And Joe Ariola had a bit of a mild upset too over number 32 ranked Tristan Sponseller at 184 pounds.
Ariola's match was really the one that did it, because it meant that UB only had to win one of their final two between Benjamin and Gunning, clinch it. And Ariola's match was a lot of fun. Live stats for wrestling really depends meet to meet. For this one, we just had text, showed the two wrestlers, showed if they were in a neutral or a top and bottom position, and showed how much time was left and what the score was, and that's it. And this thing would update every 25, 30 seconds. And we're watching these numbers and chatting online, and Ariola got a takedown, was reversed them back. You know, it was happening a lot. UB had a lot of first period takedowns that they then gave up a few points before the first period ended in this match against Lock Haven, which was a bit of a bummer. But that Ariola match was a lot of fun. I think he ended up winning 8-7.
8-6.
Oh, he was up 8-6. He didn't give up that point. Yeah, I mean, that was what really swung it, because Jake Gunning, when you've got Jake Gunning coming in at heavyweight, I wouldn't say I'm so confident in him that I feel like it's a guaranteed 3 points yet. But I felt very, very good coming home knowing that we had Jake Gunning. Even once Benjamin lost, Benjamin had a real tough luck day. He had 2 1-point assists in the 2 matches that mattered.
And both against guys that were ranked, I should say.
Yeah, that too.
And he wrestled very well against them, so he's very excited for him going forward. And then once Gunning came on, I think he got a takedown in the first period. Then after that, I was like, that's it, we won.
Gunning was the one wrestler for either team in that match to really control beginning to end. You know, I said a lot of first period takedowns in this match against Lock Haven, lots of extra points, not a lot of riding time at all, escapes in the first 30 seconds of every period or after a takedown, a bunch of reversals. Lots of times it was like 3-3 going into the second or early in the second. Gunning got that takedown in the first minute, rode him out, you know, out of the first. They started neutral in the second, and I don't think any points were scored. And then he got an escape in the first 30 seconds of the third, and you know, nothing happened from there. And he had the riding time, and it would have taken a takedown plus something to overcome it by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And we're inferring all of this just based on how much the, you know, how the scores change in these 20-second updates. But Gunning's match was the most in control, except for, I suppose, Cotton's. Cole Cotton's another story. We kind of take him for granted. Jake Gunning came into this weekend, John, ranked 31st, you told me. John goes by one ranking system. There's 3 or 4 of them. Jake Gunning at heavyweight.
I was going off WrestlingReport.com rankings. There's really a couple that are reliable. WrestlingReport.com is really good. Intermap Wrestling is good as well, but they only do the top 20. Wrestling Report does top 33, which I like a little bit better. And Flow Wrestling does the top 20 as well. So those are really the 3. If you want to look for rankings, those are the 3 that you can look at. I usually just go off of WrestlingReport.com, which Gunning was number 31 in the nation coming into this weekend. And I was feeling he's going to move up.
Yeah. Well, I think we've actually paced ourselves well this show. It's 10:53. We're at about 50 minutes, which is good for us. Last thing I have to say, Jake Gunning. John Trying to remember which basketball game it was. I think it was the women's game against LAU Brooklyn that they spoke to Stutzman at halftime.
That's correct.
Don't steal my thunder. Just want to ask you if you watched it. Did you watch it?
I did watch it.
All right. Number one, we almost got a smile from Stutzman in that interview. Almost. I saw John Stutzman smile in Maryland, and one of the greatest days in UB history to see John Stutzman smile. John Stutzman may be a wonderful coach who's very nice to his guys and is great. As fans, John Stutzman is this man made of iron. Like, they made this Margaret Thatcher biopic. They called her the Iron Lady or Iron Maiden or something like that. Like, that's what I meant. John Stutzman is just like he's carved out of stone. He's kind of terrifying. Against Maryland, I saw him smile, and I thought it was amazing. And we almost got a smile in this halftime interview. Anyway, talked about Jake Gunning in this halftime interview, even before this weekend. Said that he thinks Jake Gunning has it in him to be an All-American this year. That's a direct quote. Redshirt freshman heavyweight, coming off a year where we had Mike Silvis putting on an exorbitant amount of weight just to try and compete up at 285, which, by the way, if you see Mike Silvis now, he looks incredibly healthy. Comparatively, he's back down to 197. Not just in Gunning, but in Benjamin, in totally forgotten the name, Areola, in these guys at the end, Rill and McBride. Got some points coming in the second half, but Gunning is really the stud of the group. He's the closer. UB was down in this last weight class going up against Lock Haven. Needed the win, and I guess they would have needed. It was close enough. They would have needed the win, even if Lock Haven needed the win too. But really, I had a lot of confidence in Gunning, and everyone else does too. Got to see him perform live against Maryland, and he really is a strong dude who doesn't get caught. He doesn't get caught very much. He's always safe, which is good. And he's ranked. Stutzman thinks he's going to be an All-American this year. That's pretty awesome. A favorite, that means me and John. But he's a blog favorite. That's all I got to say. John, finish up whatever you want. We'll talk next week. What's on the docket, and then we'll close it out.
All right, I just got a couple quick things. As far as Gunning goes, in the MAC, in the national rankings, there is only one heavyweight that's ahead of him, and that's Mimo Lytle from Kent State, who is number 26. So Stutzman's he's actually no, excuse me, no, there's another one. Northern Iowa. I forget Northern Iowa was in. Make that 2.
Merrimack had a good comment today, but he only put the numbers out. He didn't put who they were and whether they're in the MAC.
But yeah, Blaze Cable from Northern Iowa. He's a top 10 guy. He's a former All-American.
Blaze, that's a wrestling name.
If I remember correctly, the MAC had last year was basically if you place, I think, top 6, you made it to nationals. Gunning's going to place top 6 in the MAC.
Yeah.
So I am fully confident in saying he is going to nationals this season. Another guy we kind of touched on earlier was Colt Cotton. He's been a wrecking ball these first few weeks. He's 5-0. I assume once the individual rankings are updated, it's probably not going to be until probably tomorrow, which is Monday or Tuesday. He's going to be ranked somewhere in the top 30, which he deserves to be. He's been wrestling lights out so far. Only problem is 149, where he's wrestling, is one of the more stacked weights in the MAC. I think, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 4 guys in the top Wrestling Reports ranking. So he's got a little bit of a bigger of a hill to climb than Jake Gunning does, but he's definitely another name to watch, and he's very fun to watch wrestle. I was at
Cotton is a lot of fun to watch wrestle.
I was at the Columbia match, when his first match back, when he pinned his kid. He came out and pinned him. He's just awesome to watch wrestle.
Yeah. Another guy who's got a real good shot at a Nationals berth, and this is more because of the lower level competition in the MAC, is Tyler Rill, right? 165 doesn't have a lot going on.
Yeah, 165. I think it's just oh crud, what's his name? Just a kid from Missouri, Dan Lewis, I think. And that's really it. So yeah, he has a pretty good shot as well. Even Kyle Akins at 125.
That was the other name I was going to ask about.
Yeah, Kyle Akins, even Brian Landry with the way he's been wrestling. Actually, I forgot to mention this. The guy he beat, that was another upset. The guy he beat was a senior, is ranked number 32 in the nation. So we might see him pop up.
This is at Lock Haven or West Virginia today?
Lock Haven.
Okay. You got a win versus West Virginia too, right? He went undefeated on the day?
Yes. There's 3 guys, Cotton, Lantry, and Gunning, all went undefeated today.
Nice.
So yeah,
we'll probably see you're thinking 4 guys even on the fringe of the rankings next week, earlier this week, whenever it shakes out.
Yeah, Gunning is definitely going to be higher. I'd probably put him. The win over the number 27 guy. I'd probably bump him up to 25-ish. Cotton's 4-0. He's 5-0. He should be in the top 33 conversation. Lantry could be in the conversation too. As like maybe number 32, number 31. Even Kyle Akins, even though he doesn't really have the same record, just the quality of guys he's been wrestling. He's wrestled the national runner-up, and he wrestled him really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting 5-3 out of 125 against West Virginia there. I actually didn't realize it was only a 5-3 match until well after the day was over, and I went back and saw. That's real solid. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. I'm gonna wrap it up now. I think next week, real big opportunity for all wrestling in the New York State Collegiate Championships. This is a massive tournament with every wrestling group from the state. It's hosted by Cornell, is it, John?
Yes, it'll be at Cornell next week. Which usually it's kind of flip-flopped, where usually the New York State Championships are like this weekend, and the Northeast duels are next weekend, which usually I go home and I'm able to watch the duels, but instead it was flip-flopped and I wasn't able to go. But yeah, Cornell, it'll be at Cornell. Any school you can think of in New York State will be there.
Literally any school you can think of. It's amazing how long the list is. Like, I think Long Island Post is there. This was a weekend last year that really established that wrestling was on the rise. This was, I think, when we started to get really excited about what they might do. And they ended up with many, many close losses last year, but saw a lot of individual talent shine through at the New York State Collegiate Championships. And all these guys that we just mentioned, that we're excited about to enter the rankings, they're all poised. They all have a chance to win every single one of them, their brackets or their weight classes. The only other thing going on next weekend is swimming's one competition in all of November and December. They'll be at Bucknell for an invitational there. So next week, we will not have a show next week on Sunday because I'll be on an Amtrak train. So we're going to move it back to Tuesday, which we've done once before this fall. I like to say at the top of every show, it's Sunday at 10, so you know what we're doing, but it's going to be Tuesday next week. We'll only be talking wrestling and swimming. We won't have anything to preview because there's a full week and change off before wrestling gets in action again. So we'll probably take the 29th of Thanksgiving, 29th of whatever month it is, November off, and then we'll probably still do weekly through December since wrestling's competing pretty regularly then. It'll just be shorter shows. But next week we'll be talking swimming and wrestling. We'll probably fill up the whole hour with wrestling. We like them like we like women's soccer. Could talk for 2 hours about them and nobody would watch. But that's what we'll be up to next week. Then we'll take a week off. Next week, if you're one of our few live viewers, expect us on Tuesday. If you're not, I don't think anyone would actually ask me where the show was if it didn't show up on Monday morning. But if you are someone who would, expect it on Tuesday evening. John, do you have anything else for us?
No.
Nope. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm actually a little surprised we filled a full hour today. Fall's really winding down. It's just about over. Next week we'll also be talking volleyball. I don't have that in my spreadsheet because I didn't expect it to happen. We'll also be talking volleyball in the MAC tournament next week. Probably only going to be one match, but it might be 2 or 3. So we'll have 3 sports next week. That's going to be the end of the fall, and then we'll be solidly in winter sports, which isn't much. The whole Bull Run crew will see you tomorrow talking football. And if you're interested in basketball, which I should hope you are, those shows will probably wait until football season ends to finish up. But we've got plenty of basketball stuff on the blog coming for you. Hope you've had a good weekend. Hope you enjoyed wrestling. We enjoyed lots of real exciting stuff from UB's other sports. Real exciting weekend coming up, even though only 3 teams are in action. So postseason, real big opportunity for wrestling. And we'll see how far swimming's come along after a couple weeks off. For John McWhinney, I'm Matt Gritzmacher. UB Bull Run, this is our weekly Olympic podcast. Have a good week.